The United States launched airstrikes this morning in support of Iraqi forces who are making a push to recapture the ISIS-held city of Fallujah in Iraq, according to the Iraqi Prime Minister. The Islamic State has held Fallujah since January of 2014. Take a look.
Iraqi forces have begun storming Fallujah, the first city to fall to ISIL more than 2 years ago. Situated around 60 kilometers west of Baghdad, Fallujah has long been considered a hub for extremists and rebels. Its proximity to the capital, recent bombings and growing pressure from Shiite militia forces in the area are thought to have triggered the operation. Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi called on civilians to flee ahead of the offensive and warned the military to protect those remaining.
Joining me now is Middle East specialist and distinguished senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute, Dr. Harold Rhode. Dr. Rhode, thanks for being here, sir.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
All right, these airstrikes by the U.S. supporting Iraqi forces trying to take back Fallujah. My question to you, Dr. Rhode, why did the Prime Minister of Iraq announce this initiative before it started? Doesn't that just give it away to the enemy?
I think you're right. I think there's a real problem. The Prime Minister of Iraq is a Shiite. Fallujah is a completely Sunni city. These people like each other, shall we say, historically, like the Protestants and Catholics used to feel towards each other in Northern Ireland. And we'll see what happens. It's very good that the American government is helping destroy ISIS, because ISIS is not just a problem in Fallujah. It's a problem throughout the world at the moment. And we'll see what happens. We can't predict the future.
There are reportedly 50,000 civilians in Fallujah to the 1,000 compared to the 1,000 ISIS militants there. Is there any expectation that these civilians would support Iraqi or U.S. forces, or are they going to flee or hide or support ISIS? What can we expect from them?
Well, it's a problem. They don't want the Shiite forces of the government, on one hand, to come in. On the other hand, they're being oppressed by their fellow Sunnis, the ISIS members, who have imposed on them a form of radical Islam, which they hate. But there's not anything they can do about it because they don't have the guns. And if they open up their mouths, then ISIS will slaughter them.
All right, Doctor, let's move along to some other ISIS-related incidents that have been happening around the world. And first of all, I just want to get your opinion on the Egypt air crash that killed 66 people. We don't know definitive details on that yet, but do you expect them to conclude that that was, in fact, terrorism that downed that plane?
Well, we can't know that, but what we can know is that we are seeing throughout the world classic Islamic warfare. And what is classic Islamic warfare? It's not armies fighting each other. It's raids. It's terrorizing, what we call terrorism, terrorizing the enemy, doing awful things, hoping the enemy will be scared, withdraw, and then they will walk in and take over. That's what's going on all over ISIS and a lot of other extremists, mostly Sunni, but also Shiite groups.
Is that why, if this was a terror attack, or there are plenty of other examples, is that why, for example, they would hijack an airplane or bomb an airplane over the ocean, potentially, rather than flying it into a building, killing thousands more like they did in 9/11? Because not to put ideas in the heads of terrorists, but there are ways to kill greater numbers of individuals than the ways that they choose. It just seems that the ways that they choose are more horrifying.
Well, look at it this way. Where were these people going? They were going to Egypt. Egypt survives, basically, one of its basic sources of income is tourism. Now, if people see that they want to go for a vacation in Egypt and go to the pyramids and all sorts of other great things that Egypt has to offer, but they're afraid to get on an airplane, they won't, because they're afraid they may not make it there, then they'll get killed, then they won't go. So that's how ISIS and groups like this hurt Egypt and hurt their enemies.
Right, so it's not just about death, it's not just about the mass number of people they can kill, it's about disrupting everybody's way of life, even the people that they don't kill, undermining economies, undermining people's psyche. All right, let me ask you this. So this flight took off from Paris. Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, where it took off, they fired 57 employees last year for having ties to radical Islam. Doctor, I don't understand this. I don't understand how employees at an airport, which is a traditional target in this day and age of terrorism, of radical Islam, could not be vetted for associations to these groups. How does that happen?
Well, I would argue as follows. The only airport which seems to be totally secure and airlines that seem to be totally secure are the Israeli airlines in the Israeli airport. Now, how do they do it? How do they succeed? The answer is they profile. They look for people who could potentially cause problems, and they take care of this up front. They don't let them into the airport, and they don't let them get on airplanes. We in the United States and in Europe have said, oh, this is discriminatory, and we don't want to do that. But I want to tell you, I have an awful lot of Muslim friends who would much prefer to be targets, much before they want to be profiled for a simple reason. These people want to get on airplanes. They have families. They have loved ones. They want to arrive at their destination safely. And they have enormous complaints against the United States and the European airports for not profiling them. And they say straightforwardly, I'm a Muslim, I'm an Arab, you should be profiling me, you should examine me more. I want to live.
Right, so is that racist, the profiling, or does that not look at the religion, the race, the heritage? It looks at the ties that you have to radical groups.
I don't care what we call it, racism, religion. You know, Mr. Trump has said that we have to stop the immigrants until we can vet them. I want to tell you that a lot of the immigrants that have come into the United States from countries in the Muslim world, a lot of these governments are totalitarian, and even if we think, the American government, that we can go to our counterparts in some of these countries and see that they don't have a police record, these totalitarian governments many times say to themselves, they don't care what we want. If they want to get bad guys into the United States to do things for the future, then they'll tell the American government what they want us to know. And that maybe is a good idea, that we should stop immigration from places where we know there are problems until we can vet these people. This is not to say that all Muslims are bad people. That's wrong.
Doctor? What's the answer then here to make our airlines safe?
It's sort of, the answer is surgery. Surgery hurts the patient, but it saves the patient, God willing. And that's what we need here. We need profiling. We need to make our airlines and our airports as safe as Israel's are. And that's probably the only answer. We have a lot to learn from their experience, and we should follow them.
Right, and I say this all the time because it needs to be repeated. We're never going to solve the problem as long as our president doesn't recognize what the problem is, and that problem is radical Islamists who want to kill us. And as long as that goes unrecognized, as long as he rejects what fundamentally drives them to kill, to terrorize, to instill fear around the world, none of this is ever going to be solved. But Doctor, I appreciate your input. It was a great conversation. It was great to have you. Up next, Jewish refugees from Nazi Germany are criticizing the way Europe is handling the Syrian refugee crisis. Scott Greer is with me in a minute.